This is John Howell Essential Cuts, your daily rundown of the best from today's show on 890 WLS.
It was 2 weeks ago today that the wildfire broke out in Maui. On the heels of President Biden's visit yesterday and his promise for the full support of the federal government, today Maui County says they are done searching 100% of single-story residential properties. Okay, but that means multi-story structures may contain many more victims. Let's start there with Alex Stone, ABC News correspondent back in Los Angeles. Alex, what's the latest from Maui?
Yeah, so this is where it gets interesting in that they had been putting out a number for the last 2 weeks saying, 37% searched, 80% searched, 90% searched. Today they said 100%, but we haven't done any of the multi-level homes or any of the commercial buildings. And everybody went, wait, what? That we thought this was an overall number that we were getting, not just single-level homes. There were a lot of other apartment buildings and buildings that had multiple levels to them and art galleries and restaurants and other things. So this is a big change today from what they had been indicating. And we heard from the governor a little while ago talking to our crew saying the number of dead is going to go up as they get into these multi-level buildings, and he says it's not going to be good.
We do expect to see a lot more loss of life. It's going to be tragic. I want to brace everyone for that. And then we will come together and do what we can to rebuild our lives.
He says it's going to take about a week or two now to search those multi-level and commercial buildings, and it's going to be delicate. They've got to go through the many floors that pancaked on top of each other, and they got to go in and find out where they collapsed. And then he says
those buildings are very fragile, and they have to use some additional equipment to peel back some of the levels of floors that collapsed. So in order to do it right, that takes a little bit more time. In some cases, they'll have to suspend dogs and firefighting personnel over the area, which is a very delicate and dangerous process.
So, John, the news he believes is about to get a lot worse than we already know it. 115 dead. It is horrible as is, but there are about 850 people who are still missing as of today, according to the mayor. They feel like some of those folks are in the remains. They hope that they're going to be found alive, that they just aren't in contact with family, but they know based on where the buildings are, who was in them, that there's a very real chance that the number is going to go way up. So the governor today saying, brace for it, the number is going to get worse.
Way up. 850 still unaccounted for?
Yeah, 850 where they don't know where they are. Some of them probably are fine and just either haven't communicated or their name hasn't been brought off the list. And the problem being there is not one official list. There are 3 or 4 different organizations and community groups, neighborhoods that have done their own lists. This is, I would argue, another failure of the Maui County government that they didn't do an official missing persons list. Instead, so you get all these different ones that who knows how they're run and when names are brought off of them and all that. So they're not very official. It's probably not a very accurate list that they're putting together right now because it is so unofficial. But the mayor believes it's around 850, and they fear a lot of those people may be in there.
But they're either in those hotels or the B&Bs or what have you. It's been 2 weeks, let's say a week, since things have kind of settled down. They must be able to put together some comprehensive list by now.
You would think. But these are people that are on the list, and, somebody added them to it, and they don't know, have they been found? Who are they? It may say that it is Joe Smith. Well, who is Joe Smith, and where is Joe Smith? And unless somebody contacts them to say, I found Joe Smith, or their DNA is found in everything, then they don't know, and they can't take them off of there. So it gets confusing. There should have been an official list from the beginning. In Paradise, California, the county sheriff's department ran that list. They knew who contacted them, where the person was from, people to contact around those people. This one is like, well, this group, that put up a tent in the local park, they've been taking names, and then this group has been taking names. They don't have an official list.
Should be running the scroll on the bottom of a TV screen on every channel, I would think.
Everybody's name on it, yeah. And let somebody say, hey, I know them, that they're living with me, but no, they don't have that.
Are the residents unhappy with the response from FEMA, and what's the reaction to the president's visit?
Yeah, they are, and there was some anger last night about the president being there. Look, there is an anger at mainlanders, as they call them in general, of outsiders who come in. There are those who are angry about tourism and long have been, and water rights on Maui. So there's always this underlying thing going on, but there is anger among those who want FEMA's help. about saying that they're not getting enough and that these $700 checks that FEMA is handing out, where you get one, won't go very far on Maui, where it's very expensive to live. There is no moratorium on rent. People who lost their homes, they still have to pay rent. So they're saying $700 is not a lot. Then the other side of it is anger at FEMA, not trusting that FEMA is there for a good reason. There is a rumor that is very much believed on the island today that FEMA will give you money, and if you take their money, you are giving up your land, and that this is a lower 48 land grab that is going on on Maui right now. So FEMA is trying to dispel those rumors. This is FEMA reps saying this to the Maui residents.
We're here to be an asset for you, one of the many options that you can take advantage of. So when you hear these ridiculous rumors out there, nobody wants your land. By law, we don't do that.
But many people on the island believe that's what FEMA is doing there. And so people are told, don't talk to FEMA, don't answer the door when they knock, don't take their money. But then you have the other side of just the anger of everything going on. And the governor talked about that.
Some people were expressing, I think, their sense that Hawaii is still, in many ways, a sovereign place. I mean, all those feelings are welling up in people. Right now, though, that feeling and that anger has to be, of course, translated into compassion and kindness. That's my role.
So there were some who were booing the president and holding up signs against him yesterday. Some of it political, the other parts more Hawaii-focused, but there's a lot of distrust on the island and a lot of anger as well.
You know, a lot of people say, federal government, stay out of my life until something happens. Then it's quickly, where's the federal government? Where's mine?
Yeah, there's not enough help, but you still have those on the Hawaiian Islands saying, stay out of my life. They think that, this is the imperialist nation coming to take over Hawaii, and that's where you heard that FEMA rep saying, that's not what we're here for. Legally, we can't buy land. We are not buying your land by giving you a $700 check. We want to help you out.
Alex Stone, thank you very much for the report. We appreciate it. How are things out in Los Angeles with the rain?
A lot better now. I landed from Maui, and then immediately we got hit by a tropical storm. It was rough on Sunday and yesterday morning. A lot better now.
Most of it kind of veered off towards Palm Springs, right?
Well, the heart of it, the eye actually went right over L.A. It went over San Diego, then turned left, sat over L.A. for a little while. But Palm Springs, because the ground is hard desert land, can't hold a lot of rain, it got all those rain bands coming off to the right of the eye, and they got pummeled. Everybody got a lot of rain, but Palm Springs had nowhere to put it. And today, more aftershocks. You can just bake that into the cake as well? Yeah, we had one this morning again. That was unbelievable on Sunday as we're covering the just pounding rain, and then everything starts to shake. And I went, you have got to be kidding me. We're now going to have an earthquake? Then that night I went to bed and got woken up by an aftershock. It's been hitting us. Still love California? Still do. Okay. Thank you, Alex Stone. Have a great day. You too. Appreciate your time.
Now, what are fires before or after the earthquake?
They were after the earthquake, I remember.
But before the flood. Don't even get me started on the crime rate.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Has the Friday morning swim club in Montrose Beach, or at Montrose Beach, now become too big for its own good? More and more and more people are joining the early morning plunge. It started on social media, apparently. The club is breaking almost every rule the Park District has about swimming, and apparently just getting away with it. Let's start there with Katie Anthony. She's a reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times, a member of the Watch Dogs. She's been writing on this, and she broke this story. Thanks so much for your time. Katie, give us a brief history of Swim Club.
So it's a unofficial group that started meeting in 2021. It started with about 8 friends who all decided to meet up at Montrose Harbor early on Friday mornings before work as kind of a way to just connect before the weekend and, catch up with each other. And from there, it grew mostly from word of mouth. That first summer, it started out as 8 friends and grew to around 700. And then since then, it's just totally exploded on social media. And now it's around 3,000 people that are jumping into the lake at Montrose Harbor every Friday morning at 7 a.m.
I'm sorry, how many people?
Somewhere around 3,000. It's a ton.
Okay. I thought you said 30,000. It's 3,000, right? 3,000.
Yes,
okay,
yeah,
great.
3,000.
Well, this goes against all the Park District rules, doesn't it?
Yeah, so their meeting before swimming is allowed to take place in the lake, and even if they were meeting between those hours, which is 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., they're meeting at a place that isn't ever patrolled by lifeguards, which is also against Park District rules to swim in those areas. And big blow-up floaties have become kind of an essential part of the club, and those have been banned by the Park District for years.
The co-founder of the Friday Morning Swim Club, does she disavow this? In other words, I would imagine that there's culpability issues here, liability issues for her.
So I talked to her, Nicole Noventy. She said, they're very clear to participants that they're just going to be there to hang out, have coffee, and they've worked with a legal team to kind of ensure that they, aren't taking liability for people's safety, and it's, participants' choice if they want to jump in the water and participate.
In your article in the Sun-Times, it said that somebody, you quoted, had to wait 10 minutes to get out of the water because there's no room. It's such a mob of people in Montrose Harbor that she was treading water for 10 minutes before she could get out of the water.
Yeah, so that was J.R. Kinney, and he was there with his fiance who filmed the experience for TikTok, which is one of the places that this has really blown up. And, at the start of the video, it's him treading water for 10 minutes because the ladders are very spaced out, and just with the number of people, they get backed up with people trying to get out. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of people that go encourage others to bring those floats so they aren't left treading water without one. I'm
assuming, because I haven't read or heard anything, there's been no accidents or fatalities yet.
Not that we know of. Nothing that the fire department said that they hadn't heard of anything. But yeah, we do know that that area has seen other drownings in the past not associated with Swim Club. Is the Park District going to try to shut it down? We heard from the Park District after the original article went up. The article went up on a Thursday, and that next day, Swim Club was fully in action, thousands of people jumping in. And the Park District wouldn't comment on, their direct talks with the organizers. They did say that they reached out to them in July for asking them to get a permit and never heard back. Has the co-founder of Swim Club, the woman you previously messaged, has she put up on her social media accounts that she's not responsible for anything that happened? She's out? On their website, they have frequently asked questions and a disclaimer on there that says everybody participates at their own risk. And the police are hands off? This is out of their jurisdiction? They're not interested? Yeah, we haven't, according to the co-founders of the club, they haven't had any talks with anybody from the city, whether it be police, Park District, anybody like that. Katie Anthony, reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times and a member of the Watchdogs, thank you for the update. Have a great rest of the week and stay cool. Thanks so much, John.
This is John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
It's a deja vu all over again. Here we go again. The White Sox ponder a move from the South Side. Reading from Crane Chicago Business, our buddy Greg Hines broke this story almost immediately after he left our show yesterday. While the Chicago Bears' search for a new stadium has dominated headlines for months, the White Sox have begun quietly reviewing their options as well. Knowledgeable sources say Jerry Reinsdorf, who's 87, is considering moving the organization from Guaranteed Rate Field in Bridgeport when the team's lease expires 6 years from now. There's also some chatter among team insiders that at age 87, Reinsdorf may be seeking to sell the Sox. The prospect of a Sox move is serious enough that at least one Chicago developer, who asked not to be named, is preparing a bid. And the situation has caught the attention of City Hall. Johnson's administration is planning to hold some conversations with the team about its future as soon as possible. In a statement, the team appears to be leaving the door wide open. I'll skip that. But back to his confidential sources, one insider said, quote, anonymously, looking ahead to the next 20 or 30 years, the functionality and viability of the team at its current location has to be considered. This is the time to evaluate other options in and around Chicago. And around Chicago apparently means Nashville. That's a southern suburb, a far southern suburb of Chicago. One key problem the team and taxpayers would not have to face if the Sox left after 2029 is a huge debt for stadium construction, unlike Soldier Field. We still owe, well, city taxpayers, owe about $600 million in interest in principal for Soldier Field. I guess state taxpayers, right? All of us. Guaranteed rate field, the debt is at $50 million, and that'll be amortized by the end of the team's lease in 2029. So that's from Greg Hines. There's much more in here, which you can read. Again, the White Sox management and White Sox ownership they're coveting a neighborhood similar to what the Ricketts have done around Wrigley. Can that be done at 35th and Billback Drive? I don't know. You tell me. So would you be upset if the White Sox left Chicago? And if so, where would you suggest they relocate? Why does this feel like deja vu? Now I turn your attention to, and I was Googling around on this morning, I found ontapsportsnet.com. ontapsportsnet.com. And this caught my eye. The day the White Sox almost left, a look back at the battle to keep them in Chicago. And this is from last month, July, because that was the 35th anniversary of the time when Mike Madigan literally stopped the clocks in Springfield, and they approved the measure that kept Jerry Reinsdorf from taking the White Sox at that time down to Tampa. Remember, the governor, Jim Thompson, was there. He was working the crowd hard, trying to come up with 6 more votes. 6 more votes. In 81, Reinsdorf and others purchased the White Sox from Bill Veeck. In 86, the team believed they had struck a deal with then-Mayor Harold Washington to build a new facility to keep the team here in Chicago. When Harold died in 87, that deal appeared to collapse. Jerry Reinsdorf then cut a sweetheart deal with the city of Tampa. By the way, I'm reading from this article written by Steve Paradzinski. Steve Paradzinski. It's a well-written article. And again, you can find it at ontapsportsnet.com. By 88, state of Florida approved funding for the then Sun Dome, meaning that Jerry Reinsdorf had 0.0 out-of-pocket costs to take the deal in Tampa. He then leveraged that here in Illinois. Thompson went on record saying the team will not relocate on his watch. Then Mayor Daley involved, Madigan involved, Jim Thompson involved. A July 1st deadline was set for the approval of a funding bill for the new stadium at the corner of 35th and Shields. Otherwise, the Sox would be heading to Florida. Reinsdorf successfully was able to get approval for the new stadium without paying a penny out of pocket from the state of Florida. He used that against the politicians here. Like, you got to meet this deal for me to stay. So then it started, the behind-the-scenes jockeying to keep the team here in Chicago. There was a Save the Sox campaign. I remember that. And also the summer of 88 was a brutally hot summer as well. Support was very mixed for this, particularly among downstate representatives who wanted no part of it. As deadline day approached, Governor Thompson was on the floor in Springfield. He was able to ensure all the votes he needed in the state Senate. Now it was just a matter of getting the necessary 60 votes in the state House to assure the funding measure for a new ballpark would pass. It had to be done by June 30th, 1988, midnight. 25 minutes left to go. Things began to happen. Now, listen to this archival broadcast from then WMAQ Radio. I believe it is Charles McFerrin, the reporter. And he is doing the play-by-play from Springfield as the clock approached midnight.
Time is running out. Some of the members of the leadership team are running around now, passing on information from the governor to other lawmakers. It seems that some sort of deals or discussions are being cut right now. We are very close to midnight here. I don't know exactly what clock the House is using, but we are very close to the time that this vote is going to have to be called off.
If you listen to this entire tape I did this morning, you can hear the people that were against this singing, da-da-da-da, da-da-da, goodbye, and counting down the clock, and yet the clock was stuck at 11:59. Huh.
Representative, we're at 59. I'd change my vote from
No, 2 ayes. Representative Stang votes aye. On this motion, there are 60 ayes and 55 noes. And the first conference committee report to Senate Bill 2202, having received the constitutional majority, is adopted, and this bill, having received the constitutional majority, is hereby declared passed.
Huh? Hold on a second. So as Madigan, in one of his earliest appearances of serious power, he was the keeper of the gavel, obviously, and he had the ability to control time. He stopped the clock to ensure that Governor Thompson would have enough time to secure the necessary 6 votes for that measure to pass. Stopped at 11:59. And you heard the reporter there, and again, I think it was Charles McFerrin, if I heard it correctly. The clock stopped. The governor did his work around the getting 3 from the Republicans and 3 from the Democrats. And when the final votes were cast, the clock still read 11:59, but in real time, it was 12:03, and it was definitely the morning of July 1st, 1988. Time had passed.
The Sox bill has passed. The Sox bill has passed both chambers now, and now the ball is back in the court of Eddie Einhorn and Jerry Reinsdorf. The fat lady has not sung on the Sox yet. Governor Thompson now shaking hands, congratulating people.
Yeah, Chicago and Illinois politics, huh?
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
I've been informed by a texter that the debate on Fox tomorrow night starts at 8 o'clock Central. That's good. It'll give me plenty of time to get home, get my bowl of popcorn and my Diet Coke ready for tomorrow night's debate. So our next guest, he is an election analyst, senior elections analyst for 538.com. They are right more often than being wrong, and they have looked at the field, the entire field. Trump's not going to be there. I thought for sure. Now, he's going to do something with Tucker Carlson on Twitter to counter-program. I thought for sure he would suck all the oxygen out of the news cycle tomorrow, late afternoon, and show up in Fulton County just to stick it to Fox. But apparently he's not going in there until Thursday. Anyway, they have analyzed those that are not going to make the stage tomorrow night in Milwaukee at 8 o'clock our time. And last night, the Republican National Committee announced that only 8 candidates will be on stage for the first primary debate up in Milwaukee tomorrow, 8 o'clock. And ahead of the announcement, the folks at 538 have taken a look at the qualification situations and found that beyond those 8 contenders, there's an argument to be made that at least 3 should be on stage with the others. Let's start there with Geoffrey Skelly, senior elections analyst for 538.com. In your opinion, your analysis, who has a legitimate complaint?
Well, hey, thanks for having me. I think the candidate probably with the biggest complaint is Perry Johnson, the businessman from Michigan. Looking at it, coming into the final day, we kind of thought he had the polls, or at least potentially, to qualify. And he said he had the donors. So assuming he wasn't, assuming he was right about that, it seemed like he had made the stage. But he's now claiming that the RNC told him that one of the 4 polls that seemingly had given him qualification did not meet their standards. So that's, to me, maybe the person with the biggest complaint.
I know that Perry Johnson from Michigan has spent an extraordinary amount of his own money trying to get elected to a couple of different offices. What was his background? I don't know much about Perry Johnson.
Yeah, so he calls himself the quality guru. And so he's been focused on quality control, essentially, in products. So I, with Johnson and his political background, he is not very well known. So that was definitely a hang up. And to be clear, he wasn't included in a lot of polls. So that was an issue. Because, if pollsters ask about you, it tends to be easier to actually get 1% in a poll. If they don't ask about you, it's a little harder.
Yeah, that seems to be tough.
Yeah. So, Johnson, in a way, seemingly had threaded the needle on polls by having basically almost half the polls he was named in actually coming through for him. But in the end, one of them didn't count. So that's sort of the issue for him. And, he and Larry Elder, who is another candidate who claimed he made the stage, are apparently suing the RNC. We'll see how that pans out, but obviously there's not a lot of time until tomorrow night.
Yeah, Larry is a L.A. talk show host. He's run for president previously. Then you have the Miami mayor that has not made it. But I thought for sure that the former congressman from Texas, Will Hurd, who has a pretty strong message and a great background. I thought for sure he would have made the stage, and yet he's missed as well. Does he have a complaint?
I think for Hurd, it's a little tougher. He was lacking one national poll to meet one of the paths that the RNC gave candidates to qualify via polls. So for him, that was a difficulty. Francis Suarez was in a similar boat. He was one poll short, although it did look like there might have been one national poll released on Monday afternoon that might have helped Suarez, but apparently that did not count, or it was from a not very well-known Republican pollster. I mean, I had actually never heard of the pollster, I don't know. We were kind of wondering, is the RNC going to consider this? And apparently they didn't, or what have you. So, it's a tough situation because you need a poll at 1%, and there's three national polls at 1%, or two national polls at 1%, and then two polls from the early states.
Well, plus the other problem is these guys are required to sign the RNC loyalty pledge, which is ripped from the history books like Senator Joe McCarthy here. And I know Will Hurd said absolutely not. Christie says, sure, I'll sign it. I'll just ignore it, similar to Trump. Are they holding these guys tomorrow night to signing the loyalty pledge?
Well, it seems like to make the stage, you had to sign it because Hurd, I mean, that would have been an issue even if Hurd had gotten the poll that he needed because he said he wouldn't sign it. Donald Trump says, I'm not going to sign it. Of course, he also, maybe he would have signed it in some other universe where the race were closer, but since he has such a big lead, I don't know if you can say it's all about the pledge. But someone like Asa Hutchinson, who's been very critical of Trump, the former Arkansas governor, he was willing to sign it, even though he's criticized the pledge concept, as has Chris Christie. So you do have some candidates who are sort of more vocally anti-Trump in sort of their footing in this race who have signed it, essentially saying either I don't believe Trump will be the nominee in the end, or Trump, I will sign it and give it as much credit as like Trump has given previous pledges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Geoffrey Skelly is here, senior elections analyst at 538.com. Final question. As of today, how far ahead of DeSantis is Trump? 30 ticks plus?
Well, it's been close to 40 recently, and at the moment it's like 38-ish points. In national polls, I should say, in our national primary polling average at 538.com. In state polls, it's a little closer. Trump is polling sort of in the low 40s to low 50s in most of the early state polling we've seen. And that makes sense to some extent in the sense that early state voters are paying more attention to this because they have to make a decision sooner than other people.
Have you ever seen anybody in history with this kind of lead at this point in the race?
Well, I think we've seen candidates with it, but we haven't seen a former president running again in modern times. Like that is not this is an unparalleled situation in that sense. We've seen candidates with very large leads. I mean, Al Gore had a very large lead early in the 2000 cycle, was sort of unopposed within the party, except then Bill Bradley, the New Jersey senator, ran against him, caused him a little kerfuffle. Maybe in New Hampshire, it was close there back in 2000, but Gore won every contest. So, like, we have seen dominating leads. Hillary Clinton early in the 2016 cycle had a
Jeb
big
Bush,
lead.
Scott Walker. Everybody's a darling for a day before they just vaporize.
Yeah, those guys did not have a lead on this scale.
Right.
It's a really difficult position for the other Republican contenders to figure out how to sort of lower Trump's position in the race, but do it without alienating a lot of Republican voters who like Trump.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Jeffrey, thanks. We'll read more at 538.com. Thank you for popping on. I'd love to get your analysis post-debate if you're available.
I'd be happy to chat.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Have a great afternoon.
Sure thing. You too.
Should someone have to have a government-issued license to drive a car?
Hell no.
What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster?
So great.
The license to drive? I'd like to see some competency exhibited by people before they drive.
Boo. It's like the Coliseum. Are you not entertained?
This is John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
We're talking about the Bears and Arlington Heights again. The fall veto session that begins October 24th. Legislation at that time that might give the Bears a massive property tax break at their 326-acre Arlington Park property will be up for debate, thanks in part to Des Plaines Democratic State Rep Marty Moylan, who joined us earlier this year on this program, talking about his bill.
One of the things that I want to mention to you, that a portion of the state tax on items sold inside the mega project will go to 10 surrounding communities to help them with infrastructure. Arlington Heights will keep their part of the sales tax, but the state tax will go to help the 10 surrounding communities with infrastructure, because they're going to feel part of the pain, because they're going to have to put on extra police protection, and their streets and stuff may need updating. So that's why we included the surrounding communities to let them get a little piece of the action.
Little piece. That's Des Plaines Democratic State Rep Marty Moylan, and he was on the program talking about this bill that he's proposed. The governor seems to be interested in it. Arlington Heights officials previously complained, I'm reading from my next guest piece here out of the Daily Herald, they had previously complained about their proposed cut of state revenues from taxes on sales, hotel, liquor, sports at the development. Under that legislation, they would get to 30%. Arlington Heights, Rolling Meadows, Palatine 14%, Cook County, Buffalo Grove, Elk Grove Village, Mount Prospect, Prospect Heights, Schaumburg, Wheeling, each get 6%. So that's the backstory. Now let's welcome Christopher Placek back to WDLS from the Daily Herald. Now I understand from your column here, Arlington Heights, they hired lobbyists yesterday who, I recognize a lot of these names, who could possibly influence the cut of revenue the village will get from this proposed stadium redevelopment and the legislation. Am I correct? Is that my correct reading of this, Christopher?
Yes, absolutely.
And the mayor's behind this, and the village manager in Arlington Heights is $10,000 a month retainer, but they can cancel that anytime they want, right? 30 days notice.
Yeah, and it is a per month basis, but the contract would last a year. And I found the timing interesting because it kind of is on a parallel path with recent statements the Bears president and CEO Kevin Warren made, that basically he expects a decision on this whole stadium thing to be within a year. So starting right now and the clock ticking, so that brings in the fall veto session. That's the start of the session next year. And that's how long Arlington Heights could have this lobbyist, because I think if a decision isn't made here, if the Bears don't get that property tax break they're looking for in Arlington Heights, maybe they do look at Chicago. I know you just played comments from Mayor Johnson. Maybe they are getting friendly in negotiations there. I think still the chances are good of the Bears going to Arlington Heights, but a lot of it really does hinge on this bill, and that's why Arlington Heights is the latest to hire lobbyists.
What is the status of the 3 Arlington Heights area school districts whose boundaries lie within that racetrack property, and their insistence that they're a long way away from the value of the land in their eyes as opposed to the McCaskies?
You know, essentially, I think the negotiations are stalled. Mayor Hayes last night, as I was filing my story on Deadline, asked him a couple quick questions, and I said, you know, you guys want a seat at the table here, but really this is a negotiation right now between the Bears and the school districts and what's going on with that, and the status really is not much. It's summertime, and I think the mayor wants to kind of be the third-party mediator there, and he's trying to get both sides to come back to the table. But I also think they're waiting to see what Fritz Casey, the assessor, does, and they're waiting to see what happens in Springfield, because this is a 2-year negotiation for what the Bears could pay at Arlington Park. Then in the short term, the bigger negotiation in Springfield is for 40 years.
Yeah.
So that has bigger long-term implications.
Yeah, that's a different, that would give them assessment freeze of up to 40 years, right?
Yep. And that's why the school districts are so worried about that. And we should note that Arlington Heights is actually late to the game in hiring lobbyists. School districts, all 3 of them hired a lobbyist of their own to represent their interests, and he's part of the negotiations in Springfield. Oh, and yes, the Bears have 3 lobbyists on retainer of their own. So everybody is in the smoke-filled room in Springfield right now.
Well, I recognize some of these names. Ryan McLaughlin, former State Senator Matt Murphy, former Chicago Democratic State Rep Art Turner, Larry Luster. I recognize all those names. are they involved in separate firms, or are they all in the one firm that's been hired by Arlington Heights?
So the first firm is Ryan McLaughlin's group, and a consultant to that group is Matt Murphy, the former politician from Palatine. And there's half of the fee, though, is going to be funneled to the other firm led by Art Turner, the former state rep. And I thought it was interesting, the village manager's comments last night that, hey, we're trying to make friends. We want to be friends with everybody. And the strategy, because the mayor and village manager and village attorney were on the committee to determine, hey, which lobbyists are we going to go with? It's an interesting strategy because you have suburban Republicans, you have city Democrats, and they the other firm led by Art Turner, they brand themselves as the only black-owned lobbying firm in the state, and really Arlington Heights and the Bears are going to need buy-in from the Black Caucus to get any kind of deal done. You have to have the likes of Cam Buckner, for instance, to say, okay, what are you going to give me to let the Bears go to the suburbs? And specifically, they're talking about a ticket surcharge to help pay off some of the Soldier Field debt.
That's I was playing those clips from Marty Moylan from April on this program where he's saying we have to spread it out a little bit. Everybody has to get a little piece of the action here, and you're absolutely right regarding that. And Marty, it should be mentioned that he's a former mayor of Des Plaines, and he was the one that worked with Churchill Downs to get the Rivers Casino put in Des Plaines, correct?
Yeah, and actually what Marty is doing with, and you read those percentages, which are maybe placeholder figures at this point, and Mayor Hayes said last night that he doesn't really care so much what everybody else gets, but what Arlington Heights gets is very important to him. So what Marty Moylan is trying to do is model off of Rivers Casino, where there are benefiting communities in the south suburbs that didn't initially get that so-called last casino license in 2010, but they got a cut of Rivers Casino revenues, and Des Plaines every year has to give a chunk of what they get and funnel that down to the south suburbs. So Marty's approach is similar in that respect where, okay, not only Arlington Heights is the host community, but how about Palatine? How about Rolling Meadows? You guys have to deal with the infrastructure too. So it's modeled off of the Rivers Casino bill from like more than 10 years ago.
And then Marty still has that $3 ticket surcharge that goes directly back to the city or the Chicago Park District to make that contract for Soldier Field whole.
Right, and I think that's part of the buy-in from folks like Cam Buckner who said, hey, wait a minute, why are the Bears leaving the city? And Soldier Field is his district, so that's why I mentioned him. But there also might be some other things that are suggested about, hey, what else about this debt, which is they owe more, not the Bears, but through the Illinois Finance Facilities Authority and the bonds, and it's grown to more right now what is owed than when it started in 2000.
When do you expect this story to advance again?
I think this is a good indication. As Tom Hayes said last night, this is a crucial time. Summer is ending here. Maybe there have been a couple negotiations here and there, but it's really going to ramp up as we get into fall here. So they go back to session late October, and that goes through, I think, the first or second week of November. I don't know that an official deal is going to be done. I think it might, probably likely it goes into 2024. And so it is a crucial time, and yet I also anticipate that this is probably going to go into the new year. And meanwhile, though, we shoot photos every week out there at the racetrack. That grandstand is almost completely demolished by now. So they are clearing that land, and it'll be ready to develop with something. Will it be a Bear Stadium is yet to remain to be seen.
Christopher Placek, thank you very much for jumping on. We appreciate it. We'll read more at the Daily Herald.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
John Howell, Essential Cuts. Check back every weekday for another episode of John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.